And that's something else I want to look into, and it's really interesting, and I think that can probably be tied to state repression into a lot of legal cases.
So I thought your point regarding not criticizing within the movement is great. Curious in your interviews, do you find an embrace of the word violence from people within the movement? Because I feel like that's a word that has been put onto the movement from the outside, and I find it disturbing when people in it use that word. Do you find it used naturally without your prodding, or?
Yes. When I talk to social movement actors who are in mainstream organizations who are in positions of power, they easily refer to militant direct action as being akin to bombings and hurting people. It's not everyone. Activists don't use that language. I haven't talked to an activist yet in all my years of being in the movement who just calls it violence, but unabashedly, some people in some organizations discuss these things as violence, and not even when I say militant direct action. The way I interview, I have to interview someone in this room, I shouldn't tell the secrets. The way I interview is to say, what is direct action? And I just, let the tape roll. As an interviewer, the best thing you can do is to shut up. And people are happy to call things violent.
Why do you think because we obviously see it coming from the mouths of people who are violent, and oftentimes when someone is guilty of doing something to someone else, they often project it to negate themselves. This is what Lauren talked about on Saturday. Why do you think that mainstream organizations have internalized and are using this language of the animal abuse industries? What are your opinions from your research or your personal opinions as an activist?
The things that you're not doing, you label as violent, but we all come from a society. We're all socialized into a super violent society where the things that seem most normal, like not murdering other people and not murdering other animals, we unlearn that, right? It's like as soon as we get off infant formula. And I think that the question actually is well, I think that the good question is why do you think that, right? But I think that that's the mainstream way to think. What's been most interesting to me is I've interviewed some people that have kind of seen the light, and they've been supporters of militant direct action, like vocally they refuse to demonize it, and then they change their mind. And then they go and they call things violent. And I think that, and I'm coming at this as a sociologist, there's a certain thing that happens when social movement organizations become institutionalized and people move from being grassroots activists to being professional social movement actors. And the shift stops being on the target of oppression you're trying to help, and it starts being on your job. And so there's lots of research that finds that the sorts of claims that social movement actors make become more diluted over time as they become more entrenched in working as a full-time activist. And many activists actually leave their movement and just become a full-time activist or a full-time social movements person for whatever organization will take them once they gain the skills as a PR person or as doing accounting. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. I think if you get into a bigger organization, over time, you're going to buy into the organizational line. Most social movement organizations want to have 501(c). Did I say that right? 501(c)(3). Yeah, I always say mine. They want to have that status, which means that they have to, there's a lot of things that they can't say, and there's a lot of things that their employees can't say. And I think that you get kind of, an interesting thing for me was that all the organizations, when I interviewed people, I would hear the same catchphrases within one organization. So at Humane Society, I would say, do you think we're in one movement or two or three or four? Do you think there's welfarism, animal rights, animal liberation? And the response from everyone was, those are distinctions without a difference. Everyone I interviewed at that organization. And when I was at PETA, everyone I interviewed had little catchphrases for things. And so you see institutional norms start to override maybe individual feelings or direct individual feelings about issues. It's my best guess. Here.
In light of this ad on the screen that was in a PETA newsletter, when you were talking and when you were doing interviews at PETA, I would imagine if you asked them why they don't run things like that anymore, they would say that, well, there's going to be some sort of fallout would be imminent if they were to publish that today, like the public wouldn't support it, their donor base would collapse or something like that. I mean, considering that, you know, when PETA is running ads like this, they're still growing on a yearly basis. Is there any like evidentiary basis for that fear that you found? Do you think that the public, my position is the public by and large would support, you know, an animal, like a live liberation scenario. In general, the public supports actions like that. If an animal's abused, people directly liberating it from the places of abuse. You know, non-arson, non-vandalism type of animal liberations. And is there fear legitimate that they're going to, you know, lose support, or all the concerns that they would argue, are any of those legitimate? I mean, could they run this today without the consequences they fear?
You know, personally, I don't think it matters if they run this, because in my research with media coverage, they get associated with everything that happens, no matter what happens. I mean, Humane Society does something, people call it PETA. Burn down a building, people call it PETA. So I don't really think, I don't think it matters. I don't know of any research. I only know of one person that systematically studied the animal rights movement in a way of like trying to like measure things and how they work and how they operate in a statistical sort of way. And I don't know of studies of other social movements, but it's definitely worth looking into. Now when I talk to people and I ask them about this, it's generally kind of like, what? I don't know. Like people are just like, that's their response when I would get tough questions, and all the organizations, people would just be kind of like, it's a large organization. I don't have much say over it. I mean, I could be talking to a VP. I mean, I need to talk to Ingrid, right? So if anyone has an in, you get me there. But this one project I work on, this one department I head, or this one thing that I'm the VP of, I know I'm comfortable with that. And so I don't know why they make those decisions. I'm sure they have reasons. And all these people publicly have a lot of faith in. And I've caught people who do make these decisions start to tell me about it and then turn off the tape recorder. So I know there's active discussions, but I don't know if there's anything to validate the decision or not. I think they got a big lawsuit against them though at one point. PETA did.
It's interesting that about certain actions, but then when presented a question that they feel would subject them to criticism within their workplace, they give you that response, well, it's a big organization, I can't speak for all of us. What is militant direct action? What is it doing? Like, it just doesn't add up. It's very contradictory and confusing, because in one instance, they're saying, well, militant direct action is bad, and make a sweeping generalization about what is direct action and what it does to the movement. But then when presented with a I'm with PETA or HSUS, and that I don't want to misrepresent that. It's just,
Well, yeah, just to be clear, PETA never says militant direct action is bad. They always say, they used to say, you know, whatever, do what you're going to do. Now they say, we won't say anything about it. That's what they say now. But they don't do the active sorts of things helping them. But yeah, it is an interesting contradiction, but you have people who need jobs, right? And there's lots of rules about what people are or are not allowed to say. So people have gotten fired for saying things.
it seems like there's more silencing with these organizations than there is actually silencing from other people. I mean, it's